naval dockyard at Chatham has been in operation for over 400 years, and it doesn't take a soaring military intellect to work out that the Medway is a brilliant place to keep a navy. It has a fiendishly sinuous deep water channel, plenty deep enough for any ship that ever sailed and carried guns. With a favourable tide and some local knowledge, it shouldn't take more than 6 hours for even the worst sailing ship of the line to cover the 15 miles from the Thames estuary to relative safety under the supposedly ever-watchful gun batteries at Upnor. The river around Gillingham, Chatham and Rochester is plenty wide enough to accommodate scores of ships at anchor. The 15 barges that turn up each year for the annual Medway races have plenty of room. The river could accommodate 5 times as many vessels and still not be crowded. The Medway is as near to being impregnable as any navigable waterway ever could be. Yet in June 1667, a Dutch fleet of maybe 30 ships came into the Medway, guided by 2 turncoat Englishmen who knew the river very well. The commander, called de Ruyter, is as big a cheese in Holland as Nelson is in England, probably bigger. The Dutch sent Marines to take control of the fort at Sheerness. It was easy. The garrison scalpered as soon as the Marines came up the beach. Then the Dutch cut the chain that was across the river at Gillingham and spent 2 days destroying some of the most important vessels in the British Navy. Apparently, they never took the fort at Upnor. For 48 hours its garrison popped away at the Dutch while they laid waste to the pride of British naval assets. Each year, what is possibly our greatest naval humiliation is commemorated by men with a slightly overdeveloped imagination, a love of frock coats and loud bangs, who spend the weekend firing blanks over the heads of confused yachties. The Upnor gunners of the time were so pathetic that the invaders lost a mere 50 men and a few fire ships that they intended to torch anyway. The British lost dozens of ships and every scrap of self-respect they had. When they eventually left, the Dutch took the best ship in the fleet, the Royal Charles, with them. When you look at the map, you have to admire the sheer courage and elan of the men who planned and executed the operation. Of course, there's no need to worry, it'll never happen again. The Dutch have far too many of their so-called coffee shops to ever bother pulling off such a stunt. The internet has hundreds of good references to the raid. Start with Wiki and dig as deep as you like. The Dutch have kept the transom from the Royal Charles on display. I reckon it's time to start a sailors' petition and get the Dutch to give us back our transom. Later on, gun batteries were added on either side of the channel. You know, we Brits have long been specialists in the art of closing doors on freshly vacated stables.
It says, vessel to anchor opposite. Ah, I see. Ah, vessel to anchor opposite. Powder magazine. Ah, so they're saying, be careful here because there's an ammunition store here, which I guess makes sense, doesn't it? This is where they loaded ammunition. Powder magazine. Powder magazine. Fantastic.
Even then, it was recognised that the dockyards are much safer places when the powder kegs are left on the other side of the river. The naval dockyard is now a museum. A sail around will reveal loads of interesting vessels. There's the 1945 steam puffer Vic 56. It's the last surviving example of 100 such vessels built as wartime supply ships. She's kept in splendid working condition by a group of slightly deranged but utterly dedicated volunteers. Then there's the Kingswear Castle, built in 1924 to move holidaymakers around Devon and still taking passengers. Also in the dockyard area is the paddle tug John H. Amos. She was from Hull, but spent 30 years sitting on the Medway mud as a wreck before being acquired by another group of dreamers. God bless them, by the way, who hope to live to see the day when she too is steaming around the Medway. Then there's this. Former Russian diesel submarine U-475, Monica Black Widow. Once carried nuclear arms and also spent 27 years playing cat and mouse with NATO warships. She isn't in a very good state of repair, and I'm no naval architect, but I think it's reasonable to assume that a 15-degree list in any sort of boat is generally not regarded as being a good thing.